Thank you very much for inviting me to speak. It's my third year presenting to MOBI, and it's a privilege every single time. I especially appreciate those of you in West Coast California that are up at 7 a.m. to catch this. So 2 years ago in Munich, I talked about a vision of a future with autonomous mobility driven by data. And I relayed the story of a devastating car accident that almost took my father away from our family. 1 year ago in Los Angeles, I presented the idea of monetizing data using the tools of the financial system built on decentralized infrastructure, leveraging accepted models of securitizing and collateralizing intellectual property. And I used the music collections of David Bowie and the Beatles as examples of the financial products constructed to give data owners more control and power while unlocking latent value and potential. Now, I'm going to tell you how far we've come in only 1 year to turning this vision of a new data economy into a reality. I'll tell you a little bit about some of the work we've done in the field to advance the use cases, as well as give you an idea about Ocean V3, our latest release. Ocean V3 is a culmination of technologies that we, as well as the rest of the community, have moved rapidly from the drawing board into production and allowed us to build and release a first cut in less than 2 years. But before we go into V3, let's do a quick recap. So in late 2016, we realized that at the confluence of blockchain, AI, and data, it was going to be a lightning charge to spark a new data economy. If blockchain could help secure provenance of data and a claim of intellectual property rights, if blockchain could act as a transport layer for value and data, if blockchains could be used to manage access control to data, then it would be the perfect mechanism to unlock data silos, because it can give access to data if all the conditions of access are fulfilled, all without any intermediary. And more importantly, this vision aligned to our core values to equalize access to opportunity and give people back control of their ideas and their data. We need to give people the ability to add value in a society, the ability to take their ideas and sell them in a way that's borderless, global, and fair. We also need to give people the ability to own their data and control as well as control where it goes and who gets to use it. So our work since 2013 in blockchain and prior experience since 2003 in the automotive sector has given us a unique experience to design and deploy a system that can help kickstart a data economy, particularly for the mobility sector. So let's take a look at the two key problems we need to solve. People need comfort, security, and control to share their data. How can we give it to them so that they can freely share it? Just like Uber made it completely normal for someone to jump into a stranger's car or a driver to let a stranger into their car, we need to make it completely normal for people to feel safe to share their data when the natural instinct is not to. And second, what is the value of data? If data is shared, what is the right price? Because there hasn't been a lot of data sales, the market is relatively illiquid. If there is trading, the pricing knowledge is locked up and held by a narrow circle of people. So any solution that tries to unlock data needs to solve this pricing problem, and transparently. Towards the first challenge to give people comfort, security, and control, we built Ocean V1 and V2. And V1 particularly was released in late 2019 before my talk in LA for MOBI Los Angeles. It had access control mechanisms using smart contracts built in, meaning for the first time, access to data could be managed without any third-party intermediary. And in this way, one could daisy chain a set of instructions. In other words, what it meant was that someone could also build an autonomous data service pipeline and orchestration that runs completely on its own. So this is something that is akin to like a honeybee being able to visit multiple flowers to gather pollen And Ocean V1 allowed data scientists to truly own that entire orchestration process as well as control access to data. Ocean V2 was released in the spring of this year. This release gave people a way to share data without exposing either the data or the algorithms. We called it compute to data because it brought algorithms to a secure container held with the data provider. That data would stay in situ with the provider, never moving, and computations would be performed safely for everyone. And once complete, the results would be sent back to the consumer and the secure container would be wiped. Both parties got the benefit. The data provider was able to unlock latent data that was valuable, and the consumer got to access private data that they might not have normally been able to. With Ocean V1 and V2, we completed a pilot with Daimler Singapore, the company behind Mercedes-Benz, building an end-to-end solution that used the entire stack of Ocean technologies. The goal was to build a supply chain information network amongst an ecosystem of both internal departments and external suppliers while allowing the data to be monetized. And the project enabled Daimler to build a secure enterprise B2B data marketplace to monetize and put data to work. Daimler has an international footprint where every business unit can participate in a data sharing ecosystem. And the need for an easy data sharing across a complex company structure called for decentralized technologies where you could onboard, have authentication of the user, and share the data, that activation of the sharing of the data be done while ensuring security and letting every participant to control their data. This pilot is an important step in the Daimler journey to become a data-driven company and an opportunity for data sharing with clear incentives for every stakeholder. And we're continuing to work with Daimler on this. With Ocean V3 released 1 month ago, we solved the second challenge that I identified, which is what is the value and price of data? In Ocean V3, we have 3 concepts: data tokens, Ocean Market, and initial data offerings. And I'll talk about each one and then bring it all together for you. Data tokens are access control tokens for any given data set where each data set gets its own data token. A consumer simply buys the data token to get access to the data set, and the Ocean smart contracts manage all of the rest. Since data tokens are ERC20 tokens, they can be bought, held, and traded like any other ERC20 token. They use the existing Ethereum infrastructure, like the wallets, exchanges, automated market makers, straight out of the box. So the interoperability is kind of built into the Web3 decentralized finance world that is emerging right now. It's a simple but powerful construct that unlocks a universe of potential, and I'll explain a little bit more on the next slide. Ocean Market is an application built on top of the smart contracts. It's the user interface that exposes all of the Ocean technology for normal users. The market lets people publish data sets, generate data tokens, stake, and consume data tokens. There are 3 actors in the Ocean V3 Ocean Market. There are publishers, of course, the data providers, the consumers, the users, and the stakers. Data publishers bring data to the marketplace and sell at a fixed or a dynamic price. And the publisher is, of course, the owner or the legal custodian of the data. A data consumer is anyone who purchases the data for research or AI. When that data provider publishes the data set, they can choose a fixed or dynamic price. And the fixed price is pretty straightforward, right? The consumer buys the data token using Ocean, and then they consume it. Dynamic priced data sets are a little more interesting. The Ocean Market supports price setting using an automated market maker pool. So the moment a data token is generated off of a data set, the publisher can go straight up and set up a liquidity pool on an automated market maker. I'll explain a little bit more about that in the next slide. So stakers will add Ocean into this liquidity pool that's there for each data set. And the liquidity pool essentially becomes a price prediction market where stakers bring the market signal to the value of the data set, like what's the real value of it. And the more popular and useful a data set, the higher the liquidity pool, the higher the more that people put into liquidity pool, and also the resultant higher price for someone to access that data set. Stakers are essential for giving this dynamic price a signal for the data set. And for those of you unfamiliar with the concept of an automated market maker, it is essentially like a mini stock market, except the price or the asset price of, let's say, the data set or the data token responds according to a formula and to the amount of liquidity in the pool. And if people, which we call stakers, add more liquidity towards the data set, the price rises formulaically in a predictable manner. And a staker is incentivized because they get a cut of every trade or transaction done on that asset in the liquidity pool. So they actually act as market makers, as you would see in a traditional stock market for a share. And over the course of a year, a staker can earn 15%, upwards to even 300%. So the returns are extremely attractive to provide this type of service. And it puts something that might be latent or dormant or held, let's say, in a wallet to use for a purpose. Automated market makers allow each asset to have their own mini stock market. And this allows each data set to get a real-time price signal. And it's a critical piece for people to understand the value of their data if they've never shared the data before. So as I said, useful data sets will tend to have higher liquidity, higher prices, and higher trading. Over time, the market and community is able to identify those quality data sets faster through pattern recognition and methodologies to price data. And we're already seeing this dynamic happening in the ocean market 4 weeks in. Initial data offerings. So we talked about data tokens and ocean markets. Initial data offerings, IDOs for short. An initial data offering is just another name for launching a data token pool on the ocean market for dynamically priced assets. The community has really latched onto this idea. It's relatable, it makes sense. So imagine an IPO for a data set where tokens, shares, another word, are issued that represent the value of the data set and all future cash flows. People buy a piece of the data set in anticipation of its future sales and trading activity to earn income. And this construct, the liquidity pools plus data tokens tied to the data sets that are dynamically priced, is essentially an initial data offering. With Ocean V3, this is actually a reality. It lives right now. Ocean Market makes it easy. It's the very first initial data offering launchpad, but we hope that there will be thousands more using the same technology that we've developed. And Ocean V3 allows data to be priced by the market using this innovative combination of data tokens and automated market makers. And it lets people actively both trade on the data tokens and access those valuable data sets where they might not have been able to access them in the past because they didn't know where to look for them. And so the market also serves as a curation system to identify or help people find high quality data sets. When a data token reaches sufficient liquidity and maturity, it can be considered to have IPO'd and freely tradable on any type of exchange, decentralized or centralized. With Ocean V3, people are actually kind of incentivized to share data because not only do they have a new distribution channel, but if they also, when they publish the data, they also provide some liquidity in there, they can get a cut of the trades as well as make gains as the liquidity pool grows. So the reception to Ocean Market has been a very nice surprise. On the first day, we had dozens of data sets published. Within 1 week, we had 500 with over 2 million in liquidity provided by the community. In the second week, we had well over 21,000 unique users with a peak of 7,000 in 1 day. And in the third week, we pretty much maxed out all of our web resources. We needed to upgrade 5 or 6 subscriptions with every third-party service provider to keep the marketplace lights on. We overloaded our infrastructure with too many concurrent users, and we even politely asked the community to slow it down a bit so we could catch up. And just like with any market that is nascent, we're experiencing some growing pains when it launched. We're seeing similar dynamics happening to data sets as you would expect with the public markets that would have happened, like let's say in the 1600s with the Dutch East Indies companies or any new financial asset. There's an initial irrational exuberance for new data sets. This was about the first week or two in, people piled on, the prices fluctuated wildly. We saw wild price swings for days because people were adding in and taking out liquidity from data sets, trying to understand the dynamic of how all this worked together. And nowadays, the period of oscillation takes about 2 to 6 hours, and then the volatility really settles down and an equilibrium price is found. So the market is getting much better at identifying quality data sets, adding in sufficient liquidity, but not an overwhelming amount. And you're getting a price signal from the market that is real for what the value is. We're also seeing some more learning. We've got a whole bunch of things that we didn't expect so early. We've had dozens of intellectual property violations and objectionable content with letters received from lawyers around the world. This one's from Washington. And to fight this, we implemented a block list in a couple days, which is completely crowdsourced and public for everybody to see. So whichever data assets are infringements or objectionable content, we have a list, and then we have a repository in our GitHub that points to this so that people can see what assets have been blocked and for what reason. People have played with the data sets, especially the prices, by hyping them up, what we call a pump and dump in the industry, and then rapidly withdrawing their own liquidity at a profit, a rug pull. We've seen publishers try to scam the community, posting data sets with the sole purpose of doing that pump and dump and rug pull, and causing cascades of losses to other market participants. And there have been subsequent calls for better identification of publishers and a pass list of authorized kind of data partners, which we're working on. And we've also seen a half a dozen new startups form around the ocean market. They're selling data services and analytics tools to help people understand the data sets better. This is also driving people to the ocean, other ocean initiatives like the Data Economy Challenge, where we have 10 integration challenges posted for people to complete. We've seen an increase in applications to our incubator program called Shipyard. And so the ocean market is really giving people a hook to bring in new energy and community to the project. And based on the learnings, we're now in the process of re-architecting the protocol from the ground up. We're rejigging the mechanics of the marketplace to give everyone a more level playing field. We're allowing people to self-identify and develop reputations. We're rebuilding some parts of the infrastructure so that it can scale to thousands or millions of users instead of the hundreds that we can handle right now. In the last 7 years, we've talked about unlocking a new data economy. We tried a lot of the ideas. We pivoted 3 times. It's been a very treacherous and difficult road. But for the first time, we have a product that people are using. They're playing with it. They're having fun with it. They're winning and losing some money. But we're getting a ton of valuable feedback on what really matters. And what might have taken months in the past to design, test, and roll out, we're now seeing an increase in the pace that we've never seen before. That's real because it's based on the feedback. For instance, the re-architecture that I just mentioned will probably be designed, built, and rolled out in about 12 weeks. And after spending 3 years to architect a solution, we're now going to be able to rebuild much of the core ocean technology and smart contracts in about 3 months. The team is quite exhausted. We're a little bit tired, but we're also excited that the people are using Ocean Market and the ocean technology. All of this, the market, the exposure, it attracts more quality data because people are seeing the rewards, learning the mechanics, and they're also seeing the adoption happening. And so we think this is a critical step to unlock a new data economy for everybody. And it's a Web3 native way that may not have been kind of in the wheelhouse of what some MOBI members were looking at. So until now, anybody looking to provide data for sale would need to have set up a company, figure out the back office, the legal, compliance, GDPR, all that sort of stuff. They need to build sales and distribution channels, and then provide the actual value of the data itself. With Ocean v3, these barriers are much, much lower. If a data scientist has a valuable data set, or a car company has a valuable data set, they can publish it directly to Ocean Market within a few hours. Someone might have already bought it and used the data. And meanwhile, the market price has been set by a community of very enthusiastic people who are developing a keen eye for the value and use of data. We think this is revolutionary. Just like the internet made it possible for anyone to be a publisher for almost no cost. Just like Airbnb made it possible for anybody to run a hotel. Or Uber made it possible for anybody to be a taxi driver. Automated market makers made it possible for anybody to be a liquidity provider and put latent assets at work. Ocean v3 makes it possible for anybody to be a data provider, a consumer, or even a staker. We think it's the first step to break the data monopolies, because when people know the true value of their data and they have the means to sell it and get a fair price, they are going to demand control back from the Facebooks and Googles of the world. Ocean's solution is unique. We allow people to monetize data and give them the opportunity to earn by staking on data as a liquidity provider while giving a market signal on the price of the data set. We don't know of any other project with a similar approach. And I think that the idea of securitizing a data set or a data stream and making it liquid and tradable, you can use it as collateral. You can use it for lending and all the other derivatives that come when you financialize data. This might be here to stay. If we look forward to 2021, it's going to be a big year for blockchain and crypto. There's new highs for Bitcoin. ETH 2.0 is being released, and there's a growing acceptance from banks and governments that digital Web3 is something not to underestimate. We're also approaching a clear intersection where crypto meets mobility and data monetization. More people are seeing this. For example, financial analysts are now estimating that all of Tesla's other data services will be worth more than its car business in the future. And that's something to perk your ears up. Ocean is hoping to be right there when it happens as we move towards a tipping point to mass adoption of mobility, data monetization, and a new data economy. With that, thank you very much. I can hand it back over to Annabelle to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Bruce. Any questions from the audience? Please don't be shy.
Can you hear me? Can I ask a question?
Can you speak up, Chris?
Let somebody else ask a question, and I'll switch microphones. Thanks.
Okay, I have one. Based on your analysis, are the users investing in data sets mainly speculative, or do they really understand?
I think that the stakers, the liquidity providers, are quite sophisticated. One of the things within the first days that we released the Ocean Market was we realized that a very nerdy subject, data sets, was somehow cool. It was, like, for lack of a better word, it was pretty sexy, because all these people were trying to find a language, terminology, ways to understand the data. And so in the first week, I would say it was very fumbly, it was awkward. People were just trying to understand the mechanics. Starting in the second and third week, and now in the fourth week, it's sophisticated. I'm very impressed with the way the community has found new ways to price the data, and they come to a market price much more rationally, without any exuberance. And that is a very good sign, because what the community is learning right now are leading edge skills on how to price and value data, which I was just on a call with somebody who provides 13,000, who is a broker for 13,000 data providers around the world. And I asked them, how do you price? And it's essentially two ways. Number one, it's cost plus, right? Cost plus 30%, what have you. And you have to cover your costs. So that's one way to do it. Or there's a value add. So if you're selling to a hedge fund and you know that that could mean a $1 million profit on a trade, you're going to try get a little bit more money than maybe even cost plus. That's the only two ways that the world knows how to price data. And it also varies. So for instance, if you're talking to a university researcher, you might let that data go for $100. You might even just give it to them. If it's somebody on Wall Street, you're gonna try to get $20,000. So that data set you can get multiple prices for. What Ocean Market does is it gives kind of a transparent playing field for everybody to know what the market thinks the data value is. And I'm more and more optimistic that the community that we're building is going to develop some very sophisticated tools to analyze the data.
Great. I'm going to let Chris jump back in. He has a question.
Thanks. First, Bruce, congratulations on the progress over the last years. I met you 4 years ago when I was working for Gil Pratt. Gil Pratt was, for those that don't know, kind of the father of autonomous driving. He was the original DARPA program manager 15 years ago. And what brought me to Bruce and Ocean, back then BigChain DB, was a question Gil asked me about autonomous driving and data pools for autonomous driving. Gil's point was that true level 5 autonomous driving was going to take far more driving data than any one manufacturer or company could possibly put together in a lifetime at current testing rates. And therefore, the only solution was to do machine learning and building of algorithms on massive combined data sets. And that question brought me to Bruce to explore what they were doing with BigChain and ultimately Ocean. Bruce, 4 years later, can you give us your reflections on data pools and federated machine learning for autonomous driving?
It's nuanced. You always have this kind of barbell argument where it's way more complex than we expected it, but it can be very simple. So on the complexity side, in speaking with Chris and many other people as part of MOBI, you realize that all the data is in different formats. They're collecting different types of data, particularly for, the difference between a Waymo, a Tesla, and a Daimler data is they're all going to be in different formats. And the complexity to get people to start trusting each other, to go through corporate compliance, this is all kind of legacy infrastructure and legacy thinking that is there for a reason, because everybody believes that their data is the crown jewel of their company moving forward, and it's rightfully so. On the other side, it can be as simple as, you know what, we're going to go against the grain. We're going to publish this data. We're going to get a market signal on this, and we're just going to let it happen. And I'm waiting for the first car company to do that because I tell the story of the Gold Corp. It was this $100 million gold mine in Ontario. It was going down the drain. They didn't know where to drill. They had, a couple of shots to do it, and then they were going to go bust. So a new owner came in. He was a financial analyst. He said, let's open source all this stuff. And his engineers, his geologists said, are you crazy? This is the crown jewels. We cannot let this stuff out. He said, no, we're going to do this. We're going to set up a prize for $1 million, and we're going to ask the community to find out where to drill. And long story short, in about 3 months, they had over 120 sites identified from teams from 50 different countries around the world. And last year, Gold Corp was acquired for $10 billion to join the largest gold mining company in the world. And it started because they opened up their data. So I'm waiting for some automotive company to do the same thing. It's difficult. You're going to need probably the support at the highest level. But if that happens, who knows what can happen? And we already have a community that is very enthusiastic about helping you to understand the value of your data.
No.
Thank you. The questions are pouring in. I'm going to let Klaus ask his question as he has politely raised his hand.
Hi, Bruce. We met about 3 years ago when you were visiting Volkswagen Financial Services, and since then I've left Volkswagen, but I'm still, as you can see, in the blockchain area. But I wanted to ask you, one of the reasons why the car companies are a little bit hesitant is that most of the tokens are deflationary. So there's no, or the people keep collecting them because they are growing in value. And this is not the right thing. You need an inflationary coin if you want really to sell something. How do you deal with this? Is there anything built in that you can work in a way that you can build something inflationary in there?
There's definitely token designs that are more inflationary. If you look at some of the cryptocurrencies, you see the entire gamut from some cryptocurrencies that only have 21,000 supply, which means that their price has skyrocketed, or you have some tokens that have such an immense number of tokens that they'll never be realistically used, or at least not within the next 20 years. For this type of thing, I would actually ask you, Klaus, why do we have the mental model that you need an inflationary token? Because maybe what you do is you peg the cost of the services towards something that's stable, maybe the euro or the US dollar, what have you, but you pay in tokens and then you exchange those tokens in real time. So the token value is relatively meaningless for the actual user because there's a real-time exchange, and the technology is there for that right now. But you can say, okay, well, depending on where I am, like, so if you're buying from Europe, it'll cost you €3. If you're buying from America, it'll cost you $3.50. If you're buying from the UK, it's £2.50. It's the same amount of token because it's exchanged in that real time. And so the token mechanics, the token engineering can be suited for whatever kind of use case there is. In general, with tokens, one of the challenges is you have multiple stakeholders. You have dozens of different types of stakeholders. Some are the users who, of course, if they're holding the tokens, they don't want it to go down in value. Some of them, if they're speculating on tokens, of course, they want the token to go up, hence a deflationary policy. What I'm saying, I guess, is you could simplify that design space by just saying, forget about the token per se, and it's kind of dynamic. Just price your data in the currency that you feel comfortable with and have a real-time conversion.
Okay, I get this. We probably need to discuss this a little further, but somebody else should ask now.
I'm going to go back to the chat. This one's from Ben Town. Does this technology bring us closer to a future in which only the richest can access the data needed to keep them rich or make them richer, and others are even more completely shut out of the economy?
Great question. This is kind of the core of what got us going into this. So for those of you who don't know, before I got into blockchain in 2013, I was building banks, and I was seeing both sides. I was seeing that banks were extremely powerful tools to give normal people lending products. But I was also seeing that banks have an inordinate amount of power, and this relation was spreading across kind of the world in whatever field that you were looking at. You had superstar cities and cities that were lagging behind. You had superstar industries or people within those industries being superstars, that type of thing. And I'm very hopeful, and this is the reason why I'm doing this, is that I think that with blockchain and crypto, it's the first technology in the world that is a general purpose technology. In other words, it helps drive waves of innovation for the next 100 years. It'll take 30 years to deploy. It's the first general purpose technology that the world is bringing up together. You have excellent blockchain kind of incubation happening in Beijing, Shanghai, in Tokyo, in Indonesia, Singapore, Tel Aviv, all across America, in Europe, even in Africa and South America. So I think that the access to this technology is a great leveler because everybody's building this technology all at once. It's not centered in Silicon Valley. At the same time, those who can access this technology the first have a unique advantage. It's like the Cantillon effect. Those closest to the innovation, those closest to the money supply will get an inordinate percentage of the gains because they're first. So if you think about like an example like Bitcoin, for instance, the earliest people who adopted Bitcoin or just held Bitcoin now are sitting on significant gains. It's with any new technology. I think the best thing that we can do is to spread the awareness as broadly as possible, let people know that this technology is available. All you need is an internet connection and a computer, and then allow that innovation to happen, allow that access to happen. And the rich could get richer, but I'm hopeful that more people will have a chance to get richer also.
But it's not just the knowledge and the connection to the internet that you need to participate in this. It's also the capital to invest in these tokens and liquidity pools, right?
Sure. It's if you're starting from third base, it's easy to think that you're going to hit a home run when you get home, right? There are some people who are starting on first base or home plate, and there's some people starting on third base. But that is the reality. The important thing is that the opportunity access is equalized. Different people are going to have different comparative advantages, whether it's talent, money, or what have you. But the thing is as long as the people have that access, so what? I'm starting with $1. Maybe I make 20 cents today. I keep doubling it. If I'm just diligent, doing it that way, I strongly believe that you can create something of extreme value over time. So, I grew up a little bit more conservative, but over time, I also realized that people kind of need help, and this what do you call it? This equality to access. Like I wouldn't be here if I didn't have a chance growing up in poverty to kind of get into this world. I did my fair amount of work, but that equal access was the difference. It wasn't that I started on third base. I started at home plate kind of thing. So this resonates very closely to me because I know that other people will have the same chance. And so I'm not so skeptical about that, but people do need to take the chance to grab that opportunity.
Here's one from VJ. Question on data. What are the different types of data sets that are valuable, and is there a ranking by category?
Yeah, this is the beauty of the community and the market. We have no idea. We don't know what the value of the data is, but I can tell you that the market intelligence as a group is very smart. So anybody who posts a data set nowadays, there's going to be a value of the data based on the liquidity pool and the price, these two kind of levers. And so you'll get a pretty good idea of the data set. Now, if information changes where that data set is found to be particularly valuable and usable by somebody else, then the liquidity pool will increase and the price will increase. And so the market is going to tell us what that is. And that's the beauty. All we need to do is make sure that we have the easy onboarding, the integrations, kind of the hooks that allow people to kind of use the data sets, publish the data sets, et cetera. And then the market is going to give you that price signal. This was one of the questions we never had an answer to when we started 3 or 4 years ago. When people said, I'm not going to share my data because I don't feel comfortable. And then we broke that down. What are the things that make people comfortable? And that hence the Uber and the Airbnb analogy. The second thing was the pricing. We didn't have a clue how to price data. That was the number one question that we did not have an answer to. Like, what's my data worth? And it turns out that in that 3 years, what happened was these automated market maker technologies have come into play, where if you have $5, you can put your money on a data set, and then as it rises in value, you can make a gain off of that. That's a real-time price signal. It's truly kind of like a stock market for data sets. In fact, I think that we're going to see very quickly in the next few months a bundling of 8 or 9 data sets in kind of like an ETF, an index fund, and people are actually going to buy and sell that already. And I think that that's way closer than we expect.
This next one from Johannes Klepsch of BMW. He loves the presentation and feels that it's very impressive to see where Ocean is going. Do you have any corporate data providers?
We do have a network, a few networks that are running, but those are in private kind of sandboxes. So people are looking to share data, but they, from a corporate side, they want to see how the Ocean market is performing publicly. As we all know, everybody is very sensitive to what data they're sharing, A, because it's valuable, and B, because they might expose private data. So people are taking tiptoes towards this. We'd love it if BMW was one of the first to do it publicly.
This one's from Khalid. Can you provide a clear case for why ocean is desirable in the first place?
I think that the reason why MOBI exists is because it realizes that data is valuable. Blockchains are essentially the transfer of value, and a corollary to that transfer of value is that data is a fundamental piece of that value. Ocean is one project that is trying to solve this problem in our unique way. There's 100 other projects that are trying to do the same thing. I think that what we've seen from successful projects, and hopefully Ocean has something of these dynamics, is that you have the ability for a two-sided market to develop very easily. So publishers can find consumers very easily, or vice versa. The third piece that we've added could be the viral aspect that we didn't really understand until it actually happened. And that is that if people can make money off of this, people are inherently greedy. And I don't mean that in a bad way. You're greedy for whatever altruistic reasons, or you're greedy for some very selfish reasons. But you want kind of a better outcome than what you are currently at right now. And by throwing that into the mix, by giving this kind of dynamic pricing, prediction market aspect to it, people are able to become the data hunter, like known as the person who finds the data. They could be known as the best trader on data. They could be known as the person who gives the best analytics. There's a whole bunch of different new roles that are forming around Ocean that shows kind of the virality and the vitality of a potential ecosystem that can form around the data economy. Because let's be honest, the data economy is very closed right now. You have the financial data for the hedge funds. You have health data that's kind of closed completely off for clinical researchers, pharmaceuticals, hospitals. You have the ad data, and then you have kind of other consumer type data and everything like that. It's not something that we really understand. And I think Ocean is trying to make that more open, more transparent, and make people aware that their data is valuable. And so that is the role that I think Ocean can play. We're going to give a good shot at it. I think we have a very strong community. And so let's see how it goes. If I could just kind of summarize, we have 4 users. We have the data owners who want to get some latent value out. You have the data users who are looking for that data, and they'll actually pay for it if they can find it. You have the developers who want to build new business models. So, thousands of new ideas and companies can be built off of this. And then you have the enterprises who are trying to figure out a way in order to monetize their data in the first place. And so if we can activate each one of these individual categories, then we're gonna be able to build a vibrant ecosystem. And the reason why I believe open is better than closed is because we've seen with the internet and intranets, open will always run faster than the closed systems. And so we try to only build open systems. And if we have people that we're working with who want to like have their little sandbox, we'll help them build that up. But our main focus is building that technology that allows the open sharing, because we think that the world's going to move much, much faster. And I think that's also a core principle of MOBI itself.
Thanks, Bruce. This one's from Toshiro. You mentioned MB Singapore as a test case. When do you think such technologies would be usual set in a vehicle?
As far as I understand, I think data sharing. So for instance, I think this is even public. BMW, Johannes, you can correct me. There was a way already in the BMW kind of user management where you could opt to sharing your data that was GDPR compliant. So if that is the case, then why can't that be implemented in 1 or 2 years? I mean, software moves much faster than the hardware, obviously, so you could implement that relatively quickly. And it doesn't have to necessarily be Ocean, but if you had a way that you could trust a data marketplace where people can opt in and maybe it's not money they get, but they get additional services, maybe connectivity services, all that sort of stuff, maybe better navigation services. There's an argument to be made that automakers will be able to develop a much deeper relationship with their customer base if they're able to implement some of these technologies earlier. You kind of see this with Tesla, by the way, right? Whenever somebody said, you know, I leave my dog in the car and it's really hot in Arizona, and so they came up with dog mode, and then they had a couple other ones. I think they have Joe mode, which is, I forget what that was, but they have all these different modes of software where they just implement in 1 or 2 weeks. And I'm pretty sure it drives the engineers, the software engineers, crazy when Elon sends something down the line. But why can't everybody just, you know, use those screens on these that comes with every single car now to implement these types of things, where people actually can just say, okay, I'll share my data for X.
Hector, thanks for waiting and raising your hand. I'm going to let you ask your question.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to listen to your presentation, Bruce. We're lucky enough to be collaborating with MOBI and with Ocean for quite some time now. Bruce, the question is, because auto manufacturers also have all the data sets that are very valuable too, but that are not necessarily related to autonomous vehicles. So in our case, the supply chain data, which by sharing could solve a lot of pain points with recalls and other stuff on the supply chain, increasing visibility. Do you think it might be a good approach for some of them that are on the sidelines waiting to see what happens, to experiment with data that is more a commodity or perceived as less valuable perhaps than the ones that are related to training models for autonomous driving?
Absolutely. I think that's usually how we recommend when we're talking to enterprises, how they dip their toes in. If you have some data set where you don't know the value, or you think it's just pure worthless, and there's no private information, can you post that on Ocean Market and see what happens? Or set up your own marketplace. We were talking with somebody else who does analytics on crypto-related companies, and for them, it was clear they can build their own marketplace using Ocean technology. And so we don't even have to be in the middle of that. And in fact, we don't want to be in the middle. So if one automaker says, well, I got 20,000 data sets and about 7,000 or 8,000 of them, I think I have no idea what they're worth. Then it's a question of, okay, can you convince the CFO and your legal team to let that stuff go? Because the IT team, I don't think they would mind becoming kind of more sexier instead of being a cost center turning into a profit center. I think the IT folks would be very happy to be able to add to the bottom line in a way that's more asymmetric, right? Without diverting them from kind of core business needs.
Thank you.
This one's from Wolf. When should we expect to see Ocean Protocol really put to use in the automotive industry, like real-time data exchange?
I mean, given everybody knows that we're working with Mercedes, I should probably not not give a timeline on that. What I would say is in 2021, you could already see automotive use cases using parts of the Ocean technology or using the Ocean market. Some of it depends on the people around this in this call. If you're willing to give it a shot for some piece of data that you don't know the value of and you think is relatively worthless, post it on the Ocean market. We'll help you do that. We can figure out a way to get your data set, and then the community is going to give you a price signal, and it could be exciting. It could be something that you then sell upwards, up the chain, or to your colleagues, and then see what the response is. One thing that we will say, and I'll repeat in the presentation, I said we have a completely crowdsourced takedown policy. So we have some people in the community who every time a data set comes in, they'll take a quick look at it and say, is this violating IP, all that sort of stuff. And so I'm very comfortable already that the market has the tools to make sure all the bad content stays out, and then we can start filtering in the good content. And so if we could see some automotive data onto the market sooner rather than later, then you're already into a stage where automotive data is being shared on Ocean market sooner rather than later.
Actually, that's a good segue into this next question from Takayuki. How does Ocean protect data sets? I think data token holders can access data sets so they can copy data sets.
Yeah. Number one, if somebody's going to try to copy the data set, they can't republish it on Ocean. We've already had that. So the community knows how to deal with that, and we have policies to deal with that. So if somebody does copy that data set, number one, if you thought it was, if you didn't know the price, the value of it before you put it on Ocean, now you do know the price, and then somebody copies it, well, the community already understands that the data set that came from you is the original one. So they're not going to look at the copied version. Sure, that other copied version might try to get put on for a different price and stuff like that. But what we're seeing is that there is a flight to quality. Everybody is trying to find the better data sets because they'll know that in the future, if you publish that data set, or if you get the data token for that data set and it gets constantly updated, then they'll get the freshest data. It's funny that it works that way, right? In a trustless world, or the world that we're building, which is trustless, people are looking for ways that they can trust the provider, and they'll actually go towards that. And so what else do? We have compute to data. So that's something we're going to be exposing early next year. All of this stuff already exists on Ocean smart contracts, but we wanted to keep the interaction on Ocean Market simple to start with. So we have a kind of a perpetual access. If you have the data token, then as soon as you buy the data set, you have access to that data set forever. In the future, we're going to have things like time lock, one-time use, subscription based. So all the different kind of modalities where, for instance, a content creator would want to have their data exposed. So you have all these YouTubers now who would love to get a monthly subscription. Well, that's going to be exposed on the Ocean Market soon. And so those modalities will allow data owners to control how their data is being consumed and stuff like that. And then you add in something like compute to data, which is probably more of an industrial application. So this is being implemented with one of our partners right now in the marketplace, but in their own internal marketplace. And once they've done that, we would probably copy that code if they let us, and then implement it into the open source stuff. So this is why open works, is because if we can work with multiple partners and they're moving the ball forward in one direction, we can take some of that code, put it into the open source, and everybody wins. And then as we go through time, we're going to have more and more integrations with privacy protecting tools and hookups, anything that protects the data and the algorithm. All of these things will get more sophisticated. So at a certain point, you're going to have a menu of options saying, okay, if you want to have data which is consumed on location, but not by the military industry, let's just say, then you're going to have different filters. You're going to click a couple of radio buttons and then boom, done. And then you bought the compute. You know that it's secure. The smart contracts ensure that those conditions of sale are met, and then you just receive the money. All secure in knowing that your data wasn't exposed in the way that you wouldn't have wanted to. We're rapidly getting to that, and I think in 2021 we'll have great strides in moving that ball forward.
So Johannes has a question about the computing of data versus data tokens.
They're separate vectors. So compute to data is a capability. Like, so for instance, compute to data would be private in the vector of how do you protect privacy, give people comfort and security. Another vector could be, what are the modalities of selling my data? One-time use, time lock use, subscription, perpetual. A data token is, I'd say, the glue or the currency that kind of permeates through everything. It is both a representation of the data set itself as a value token, and it is also what people trade in and out of when they're providing liquidity into a pool. So they provide Ocean into a pool, and then if they trade it, they can get data tokens back out, this type of thing. And we're already seeing people collecting and holding data tokens outside of the platform, which means they consider that the data token, just having it, is valuable. So a data token, in a sense, could even be a collectible if somebody is saying, well, this is going to be like a Tesla data set, or a Mercedes data set, or a GM or a Toyota. You know, if they say that it's going to be that data set is a data set that they want to own forever, kind of thing, or at least the future earnings of, then they're going to hold that data token. And so it's essentially a representation, just call it a share or a stock in that data set. And some people will hold it for the long term.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Tram, did you have a question? I see that you unmuted yourself.
No, thank you.
No? Okay, I'm going to go to CP. Hi, CP. Thanks, Bruce, for a great presentation. How does Ocean make money? Do you take a percentage of the transaction value as the data exchange?
This is kind of counterintuitive. We try not to make money. And we, as a protocol, we were funded by the community. We raised $32 million, and our job is to deploy those funds responsibly. And the best outcome for us is that there are 1,000 data marketplaces. So every single company here on this call is setting up their own data marketplace, and of course, and then they're selling their data using different components of Ocean. When that happens, when every company is able to sell their own data using this trustless, decentralized technology, there's less of a need for Ocean protocol as an entity. And I think that there'll be a lot more self-driven kind of initiatives to move the technology forward, and it'll fork. It'll go into multiple variations, like different languages and stuff like that. So you're going to have kind of a flowering of different capabilities, different approaches, all that sort of stuff. And that would be the ideal approach. We don't need to make money in the future. We actually have enough runway to go for several years, multiple years. But we really want to be very disciplined. After 7 years in the startup world, we know how capricious life can be on the funding cycle. So we've been extremely conservative with our money and our resources, and we just want to focus only on the core stuff, which is the core smart contract technology, helping guide the community, helping nurture the community, and then working with entities like yours to just get the word out.
Bruce, I think we all feel super fortunate to have had this hour with you. Thank you so much for speaking to our audience today. As mentioned, the recording will be posted up on our website in the coming week or so. Until then, take care, stay healthy, and for those who observe, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.